we used to do this thing that's called Walk for Israel, where you went and knocked on doors to raise money for Israel. Excuse me, which seems very difficult to swear today.
Seems like really dangerous at this point, you know. So I'm in the Chicago area, and just last week there was a storm here. It was a pretty bad storm. Nothing worse than the storms that I've experienced in like Lebanon or Istanbul, over the years, and not as extreme as some of the storms I've even experienced in the Chicago area. These summer storms can get kind of windy. There was a hurricane warnings and so on, and the electricity went out. And so we waited an hour, and then 2 hours, and then 3 hours, and then 24 hours. It was 24 or 25 hours before the electricity came back on, before the power came on. And this is the dead of summer, so there was like no air conditioning, no internet, no lights during that night, and so on. And it's an inconvenience. But my parents here in the Chicago area, they live in a pretty affluent area, and the fact that this area was allowed to go without electricity for 25 hours, it felt kind of third world. It kind of felt like this country's falling apart. Also, last week, I flew in and out of Boston's Logan Airport. I mean, what a dump. I couldn't believe just how dysfunctional this place was. What a completely dilapidated piece of urban infrastructure. I understand there's some construction going on, but you can't go anywhere without taking a bus. You can't even get like an Uber to or from the airport without taking one of these buses. And the buses don't always go to the same place. So you have to figure out which bus it is. And some of the buses stop at some of the terminals and some don't. It was just completely asinine and dysfunctional. And it just sort of brings up the issue of just how dysfunctional and broken the United States has become for ordinary people, unless you're a billionaire who flies everywhere by helicopter and private jet and has a limousine. And unless you're just completely out of the bubble of ordinary people, this country has become just a total shithole to some extent. And that's partly and largely because Washington, the United States in general, but also especially Washington, has literally become a brothel where foreign and domestic lobbies buy corrupt politicians. There's no other way to put it. And it's not just Israel, and that's a big discussion that is going on right now, whether the Israeli lobby has too much influence. It's also the defense industry. But there's other kind of culprits. There's other industries like pharmaceuticals and insurance and law and so on that are basically just as corrupt as the Israel and defense lobbies. There's other countries as well, like Qatar, United Arab Emirates, that have undue influence on the U.S. policy and politics apparatus. If you want to talk about shithole countries, let's talk about the U.S., whose infrastructure is crumbling. The corruption is just paralyzing the country. This is also a country that has persistent gun violence, a collapsing healthcare system, if you can even call it that, a hodgepodge of systems. And the politicians are just completely corrupt. And I'm not even sure if ordinary politics can change that, if ordinary electoral politics through the current system can change that. But many people are trying, and they're hopeful that electoral politics can bring about a change. That includes Abdul El-Sayed, the Michigan candidate running in the Democratic primary that is taking place today. I'm Borzu Daragahi. This is my podcast. It's called Badlands. You can find it at borzu.substack.com. You can also find it at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and especially on YouTube, where I put stuff on right now. I'm more and more putting stuff on there that is linked to the Substack, but also expanding on the Substack, putting on full interviews a couple weeks after the partial interviews and behind the paywall air on Substack. So it's good to check out the YouTube. In the latest episode, I have part 2 of my interview with David Goldberg, my friend and political science professor, in which we talk about the influence of the Israel lobby and the Israel equation on daily life in the United States. This is a really interesting but brief talk that we had about growing up in this part of the United States, in Chicago's Cook County area, in a suburb that was very mixed and included a lot of Jewish people, African Americans, other minorities, different religions, and what Israel meant to us growing up and what Israel meant to him growing up and how he broke away from that and broke away from the ideology that was imparted to him by his parents and his Sunday school and his Hebrew school and all of these institutions that the pro-Israel crowd has set up here, and the Jewish community life has been infiltrated by these ideas and ideologies. I think it's good to get a dialogue going on that, because as the U.S. struggles to get rid of or reduce the influence of the Israel lobby on its politics, the most important thing to make sure is that none of that backlash comes back on ordinary Jewish people. And they have nothing to do with any of what's going on in Washington. They are not billionaires. They are not working for Palantir. They are not part of the Israeli defense tech sector that is trying to infiltrate the Pentagon. Make sure that there's a huge distinction made between the good people and bad people of the Jewish community in the United States and Israel as an entity that is trying to influence the U.S. foreign policy and increasingly domestic policy for decades now, and has what many consider an undue influence and an unhealthy influence on politics here in this country. Before I get to the interview with David, I wanted to talk a little bit about the primary election taking place today. Everyone is watching it. It's the race between Abdul al-Sayed, the Egyptian-American, American-born, but Egyptian descent candidate, public health official, and former gubernatorial candidate in Michigan, and the Congresswoman Haley Stevens. This race has galvanized the left in this country. It has brought people like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to Michigan, which is very close to here, to Chicago, where I am right now. I've been recently in Michigan visiting my aunt's has a house out there, and I saw quite a few Abdul signs. He goes by his first name on his campaign posters. Lots of Abdul signs in southwestern Michigan. I didn't see any Haley Stevens signs. And that bears out, I think, even people who are going to vote for Haley Stevens are not too excited about her. She's kind of a establishment shill, obviously just doing what the consultants, the Democratic Party consultants and bigwigs tell her to do and say. Meanwhile, Abdul Sayed, he's kind of an impressive guy. He's not just some amoral, tanky, leftist type. He seems to have some nuance and consistency in his position. For example, he was talking about how he supports actually Ukraine in the conflict against Russia, and how that is a principled position that he takes. And I kind of think that is very admirable in a way, because if you're going to oppose, as he does, Israel's actions in Gaza and Lebanon, and oppose, as he does, the U.S. war against Iran, you'd also have to, in my opinion, to take a principled stance that's not a total tanky, campist position. You'd have to oppose Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine and attempt to basically annex Ukraine. Now they've scaled back their ambitions to just a few provinces and key provinces of Ukraine. But the unprovoked attack on Ukraine in 2022 was morally abominable. And it's, I think, to Abdul Sayed's credit that he has spoken out and takes a position against the Russians in that war and is supporting Ukraine and actually supports continuing to arm Ukraine. And I think that is a legitimate position. I know some people will disagree with that. I know some people on the left are very much against the Ukrainian government, and they think it's like a Nazi government, and they've said these like outlandish things. But anyway, I think it's impressive that he takes that nuanced position. It shows a little bit of intelligence on his part and a little bit of thoughtfulness about foreign policy. Man, he's not a lightweight, and you can see that in his interviews and his responses. He is really quick on his feet. I would not want to run against him, and I'm sure the Republicans are kind of ambivalent about they'd rather run against in the elections, in the general elections in November, either Haley Stevens or Abdul al-Sayed. I think Abdul al-Sayed, and the polling bears that out, is a stronger candidate. Haley Stevens is not so impressive. She's got this like fake Midwestern accent. She attended elite American University in Washington University. It's called American University, but she tries to come off as like some Midwestern soccer mom. She keeps changing her fake Midwestern accent. As someone who grew up in the Midwest, you can really tell. She's like, us Michiganders, we talk like this. But then another time she's talking like just some dumb yuppie. from I forget what, she's from a pretty well-to-do town in Michigan. I think it's called Birmingham or something. I forget. But anyway, the more important than her affectation, which is really annoying, is her campaign, which has basically reportedly gotten like $60 million in AIPAC money, in Israel money, and in other dark money that's probably linked to Israel, not been proven yet. They're just dumping $60 million into this primary for her. And much of it has not done much for her campaign. And so it's, I think, a really toxic combination. Her inauthenticity, her obvious lack of moral clarity or inability to be really honest, as well as the money that she's getting from the Israel lobby, ends up with like a situation where on her feet, she comes up with like nonsensical word salad kind of answers to important questions. Listen or watch here.
People are bothered by the fact that so much money, $40+ million, has come from AIPAC for these PACs to talk about you and to promote you and to put you up as their candidate.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, Root, because this moment in this country and here in Michigan, people have every right to be frustrated about our campaign finance system. My opponent here on this stage, Abdul, he's got a super PAC that his father-in-law funds that has millions of dollars going into it. And look, in terms of foreign policy, Abdul and I do differ. I believe in a two-state solution. He has attacked me by name for purporting that the people of Palestine and the people of Israel deserve to live side by side